Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. What would it take? What would it take to change God's mind? Imagine if you could force God to change his mind. Wouldn't that be lovely? Isn't that the essence of prayer? You know, we look at prayer as essentially advocacy. Prayer is asking God to change his mind. But imagine if there was a mechanism. Imagine if there was something that you could do to force God's hand, so to speak, to give you billionaire status, to give you the health, the happiness, the nachas that you need. Wouldn't that be lovely? Hi, Terry, long time no see. Wouldn't that be lovely to be able to do that? Well, Mike, you can. And today, in the next 25 minutes or so, we are going to uncover the secret to forcing God's hand. It's quite amazing. It's a theme that runs throughout the Torah, but it took the Rebbe, our Rebbe, to be able to uncover this theme. Michael, good morning. Michael and Shelley are with us. This is fantastic. I'm so excited to see you guys. Welcome. Actually, I don't see you. I don't see you, but you see me, I guess. Worldwide Wisdom. We miss you guys. Okay. So imagine, Michael and Shelley, that there was something that you could do to force God's hand, to give you the health, the happiness, the blessings, the nachas. You know what nachas is? Nachas. Nachas is getting married? No. Oh, to get married. Yeah, to get married, to have the kids. But imagine you don't have nachas from your kids. Imagine if your kids don't give you fulfillment. Imagine if your kids are just nincompoops. Right? You know what the definition of grandchildren are? You know what the definition of grandchildren?
Yes,
don't get them started.
The gift we're allowing your children to.
Grandchildren, according to one version of highly controversial definitions, grandchildren are geniuses raised by total idiots.
They're the gift you get for raising your children.
Yeah. So let's see. Let's talk about. So Dean says God decides, as does man's free will of choice. God decides. Okay. God decides. Shkoyach. But are we not? Are we merely spectators in this game of life? Or do we have access to the control panel? Now, what we're learning today, we're learning part of a series, but each class is an independent installment. We're learning, believe it or not, the discourse about Hanukkah because we're still on it, right? We're in this book if you happen to have this book here. Okay, whatever. The whole series you can find on youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. It's called Mitzvasa, Mishesishka, HaChama. It's a Hanukkah mimer, the Hanukkah discourse. Anyways, what we're learning is like this. We're learning that the Hanukkah candles, I'm just going to put a little context here. The Hanukkah candles have to be lit until the time of the lighting of the Hanukkah candles is until the marketplace is vacant. Right now, the word marketplace in Hebrew has two different meanings. It can mean a place of great pleasure, or it can mean a place of spiritual chaos, which are two opposites: spiritual pleasure or spiritual chaos. And the reason why that is both terms is because when we transform, the idea is that you got to light the Hanukkah lights until the spiritual chaos of the marketplace becomes spiritual pleasure. That's why the Hanukkah lights are lit in the darkness, right? You light the candles in the darkness, a place of spiritual darkness becomes illuminated. That's the purpose. Hanukkah lights are about transformation. It's all about transformation. It's about transforming the negative into the positive, the dark into the light, the chaos into the chorus, right? What were you about to say?
Well, it has to last 18 minutes.
It's got to be more than 18 minutes, but we're not talking about how long it lasts. We're talking now about the time of when the obligation applies, right? So let's say you came home, you didn't light the Hanukkah lights, and you realize, oh my God, there's still time to light the candles, so I should light it right now. Okay, now, what we've learned so far in this series, just a quick recap, is that when we do this transformation of negative to positive, we're giving God great pleasure. We explained also that this is what causes God to laugh, because what causes a person to laugh? Laughter is a result of a punchline. A punchline is an unexpected result. You've got a story going, you got a narrative, and then suddenly, bing, bam, 1-2 punch. The punchline is essentially an unexpected response, and that's what causes you to burst out laughing. LOL, right? So It's the unexpected result that causes you to laugh. So when we take negative and turn it into positive, when we turn spiritual chaos and turn it into spiritual chorus, right, into a place of spiritual pleasure, you take a marketplace and you turn it into a place where God is recognized, God is conscious, and you lit the Hanukkah lights, then what happens there is that you're causing God to laugh. And now what the Rebbe is about to say is, the Rebbe says in this discourse, and if you got the book, we're on page 225, what the Rebbe does now is the Rebbe explains that the impact, the result, the consequence of making God laugh. When you make God laugh, then what happens is that God submits his will before you. When you can cause God to laugh, if you've got a sense of humor, if you can humor God, then God will allow you to override his ruling. That's what we're about to learn. Now, I want you to look at this text in the original text, because it's so fundamental. It's so foundational. It's so transformational to learn such a concept that I have the power to change the will of God only because I made God laugh, because I turned the negative into positive. I gave God an unexpected result, right? We're going to apply this to our mundane lives. We're going to apply it to where God allows us to overrule him in our ordinary day-to-day life, like health, happiness, financials, right? Wars, politics. We're going to apply it then to spiritual rulings of Torah, where God allows us to override him as well. And that's it. We're going to talk about two lanes, right? Give me a spiritual overruling and mundane overruling. So let's take a look at this in the original text, page 225. This is a discourse delivered by the Rebbe in Hanukkah of 1977. It's amazing. You begin to realize why the Rebbe is such a big deal. Somebody asked me yesterday why we have a picture of the Rebbe in our shul. Why every Chabad rabbi has a picture of his Rebbe in the shul. Because the Rebbe is not just another character of Jewish history out of countless Jewish characters in Jewish history. The Rebbe is an inspiration to our generation. He's the shepherd, the spiritual shepherd of my life, of our generation, guiding us through the darkness and the confusion with which we live our lives. He's actually giving us this message in 1977 of Hanukkah, where he gives us this message where he says, you know what? You can make a fundamental difference. And Dean, I'm sorry that you say we fundamentally cannot overrule God. I'm not sure what you're basing yourself on. I don't know. Is that because you're based on your own personal opinion? Is that a hunch? Like, where are you coming from? It's important to understand. Always consider the source. That my source, I'm telling you, are my sources. My source right here is the Rebbe's discourse. Now, the Rebbe is going to bring quotations from the book that defined Judaism, which is the Talmud, right? So, I don't know where your sources are, Dean, but I'm going to give you my sources. And it's right here, page 225, black on white. We're going to see it for ourselves. And I want to encourage you, Dean, to fundamentally open your mind and your heart to new paradigms. People love to view the world through the lens of their own perception. But it's actually a pleasure when you speak to people that have different opinions to you. You might actually learn something. I ran a video last night on a pro-Hamas protest. There was somebody who went into a pro-Hamas protest. The video will launch on my YouTube today, tomorrow. And he's actually interviewing the people on the other side just to see what they're actually saying. And you're not missing anything, man. They have no idea. They have absolutely no idea. But you talk to them, you give them a chance, give them a microphone and say, hey, so which river, which sea are we talking about? So what are the values with which you want to represent to the world today? I don't know. Somebody gave me the sign to hold, right? So it's interesting that, when you hear what other people have to say, you may disagree, and that's fine. But you got to open your mind and your heart to see what they have to say. So again, we're trying to understand how it is that that God allows us to overrule him when it comes to health, wealth, happiness, success, power, influence, war, weather. Can you imagine changing the weather? I mean, that sounds crazy, right? That sounds crazy, but imagine you can. Sure. Now you can do this how? By making God laugh. When you make God laugh, how do you make God laugh? Give him an unexpected result. How do you give him an unexpected result? Take something bad and turn it into good. Take something negative, toxic. For example, if you were abused by your caretakers, and therefore you're incapable of having a healthy, wholesome relationship with your spouse. Yeah, that's perfectly happens all the time, folks. People that were abused, they got wounded attachments. They cannot have a proper relationship with their spouses. But imagine that person goes through therapy and spiritual therapy, and he really, really works on himself with humility and with courage and with wisdom and with sensitivity, and he works his way, hobbles his way to a healthy marriage. Or maybe his parent was absent and he doesn't know how to be a parent. I know somebody in our community that the mother put her in a foster home from 6 months to 11 years old. By no fault of the mother. The mother was a Holocaust survivor. By no fault of her own. She simply couldn't handle motherhood. And the father also was a Holocaust survivor. Couldn't do it. So they put the kid in a foster home for 6 months to 11 years. This person was incapable of having kids. When she grew up, she was like, she was terrified of being a mother. Terrified. And you can't blame this person. You can't blame her. She was terrified of being a mother because she was like, if I'm going to be a mother, maybe I'll just be as absent as my own parents. Right? When you think about it this way, you look at a dysfunctional situation. And now the person is a very active member of our congregation. And a little later in life, but trying to stabilize. This is turning a negative into positive, turning a dysfunction into a function. Let's see what happens when we do that again. We're going to apply this in 2 planes, on a mundane, ordinary life plane, and then we're going to apply it to a spiritual plane. A lot of these topics we might have discussed already, so bear with me. We're just going to do it inside the text now, page 225. We can see that the transformation of the darkness into light is God's ultimate desire from the following Talmudic passage. The Talmud states, this is the Talmud for Din, it's in Bava Metzia 85a. Whoever teaches the son of an unlearned person, Torah, even if God has made a negative decree, he will nullify it for his sake. So if you take a son of an atheist and you teach him Torah, and you inspire him to Torah, then what's going to happen? Then God will nullify a negative decree for your sake. This is the meaning of the verse. He who takes the precious out of the disgraced, according to him it shall be. This verse is, where does this verse come from? Jeremiah. He who takes the precious out of the disgrace, the good from the bad, according to him it shall be. What does it mean? According to him it shall be. The Talmud's interpretation of this verse is not its literal meaning. On a simple level, the word him, kafi, means like God's mouth, right? So he who takes the precious out of the disgrace, according to God it shall be, but the Chassidus interprets it differently. He who takes the precious out of the disgrace, he who takes the good out of the bad, he who takes negative and turns it into positive, he who makes God laugh, according to him, according to the one who effected the change, it shall be. That's how Chassidus interprets it to be, right? So in other words, if you teach a atheist Torah, if you inspire somebody with a heart of stone and you bring them home to their spiritual roots, connected to God, what's going to happen is that you now will have the power to overrule God. And that's a direct verse from Jeremiah 15, chapter 15, verse 19 in Jeremiah. It's also the Talmud in Bava Metzia 85a, folks. This is very, very powerful stuff. Yes. Okay, good. Now, let's keep on going. When a righteous person nullifies God's decree, even though he knows that God is the one who made this decree, he does so because God's ultimate will is the nullification of the decree. Because he knows that God wants you to overrule him. And the righteous person's intervention gives God tremendous pleasure and enjoyment, right? So in other words, it's not sacrilegious to say that you're overruling God, like God Almighty now is being outvoted somehow. God actually wants you, but he's waiting. This is the mechanism with which God wants that desired result. In other words, if God wants to give you health or nachas from your kids, then instead of giving to you in a direct way, God wanted you to be able to win him in the arm wrestle. He wants you to be able to wrestle with God, face a dysfunctional situation, and therefore have the opportunity to transform it in order that you will come to the result, which is what God wanted in the first place. So I want you to think about this for a moment, guys. This is an unbelievable idea. It's transformational. This is life-changing because, it's perfectly normal for a person to harbor resentment and bitterness within himself about the circumstances of his life and upbringing. There's an amazing singer in Israel. His name is Hanan Ben Ari. I went to his concert in Israel about 2 weeks ago. 10,000 people in the stadium in Jerusalem. And he sings a song. He says, his songs are very spiritual, but they're also very pop culture. So he brings the pop culture together with the spirituality, deep Chabad concepts he put into his songs. He's a very, very popular singer in Israel. So he says, God, why did you put a soul into me? I didn't ask for this, he says. Clearly, the guy is struggling with tremendous inner demons. Clearly, you can tell from his songs. He actually recently got divorced. That's very sad. Israel, the whole country's very upset. He's really an icon in Israel, but a lot of his songs talk about the struggles of his marriage and the struggle. It's very beautiful. I wrote an article about him a few weeks ago about some of his songs. So what happened was that he writes he's like, God, Elokim, mata rotzeh mimeni. God, what do you want from me? Why did you put me into such a painful life? Why do I have to deal with all these demons? I don't want these demons. But what happens now is Chassidus helps us to understand that the demons that you're facing are there in order to serve as the tool that you need to be able to reach the desire that you want. Think about it that way. It's transformational. And it sheds resentment. So instead of saying, oh my God, why did he put me? Why does God hate me? Why does he give me such a disadvantage? It's exactly the other way around. God wants you to be so powerful. You're more powerful than ordinary people. The neurodivergent is more powerful than the neuronormal, right? If that's a word, I don't know, but who cares, right? The neurodivergent is more powerful because he's the one that has to battle his demons in order to overcome them, in order to be able to affect the result that he desires. And indeed, by the way, folks, this is the name Israel. What does the name Israel mean? What does the name Israel mean? For you have struggled, you have wrestled with angels and with man, and you've prevailed. That's the definition of the Jew. In case you were wondering if life was meant to be hard, why is my life so hard? There is no warranty anywhere. Sorry, that's a double negative. There is no warranty anywhere that you receive that says life is going to be good. That's a Christian concept, folks. Christian concept says that if you're going to be a good person, then life will be good. I mean, again, I'm not a Christian scholar, but I think that's a Christian concept because it's certainly not a Jewish concept. The Jewish concept is you want to be in this world, you're going to be in that field, you're going to play on the field, there's going to be opposition, right? Imagine a football player, an NFL player turns to the coach and he says, you didn't tell me that there was going to be an opposing team. Like, I'm here for relaxation. I'm not here to run around the whole field with a ball. And the coach is going to look at him like he's nuts. What do you think we're paying you $50 million a year for? Right? We're paying you to run around the other team. That's the whole point. The reason why you're making gazillions more than the people in the stands is because you're overcoming the challenge. That's the goal. So this transforms our perception of struggle. It's unbelievable. Let's go further. This is similar to a story later in the Talmud during a debate amongst the sages regarding Jewish law. Just a quick context, the law was regarding an oven. It's called the Tanur Shalachnai. I think we learned this orally before. It's from Bava Metzia, but Talmud 59b. It talks about an oven, right? Now, the laws of purity and impurity. We're not so familiar with them today because we're all impure since we don't have the red heifer in temple times, which purifies us, right? But the law is that when a rodent comes in contact into a certain space, then everything in that space becomes impure. Okay, fine. Now, what does that mean? It means that when if you have an oven and you have food in the oven, and the rodent is in the oven, then everything in the oven is impure. It's not kosher. It's just a state. Okay, look, Marty, it's nice of you to say that. It's pretty understandable because today we live in a life of luxury. But when your entire meal plan for the next 30 days was like, one sheep for the next 30 days. I mean, it's not so easy for you to say, well, whatever. If it was within a foot to 5 feet of a rodent, then we're throwing it out. People couldn't afford that luxury in those days, right? Anyways, so but again, it's not about the convenience; it's about the law. So the law is that if the rodent is in the space of even if the oven's off, by the way, the oven's off, but it's in the same space, then everything in the oven becomes impure. Now, what happens? The case of the Talmud is if it's an oven made out of cylinders, which means, let's say, like tires. Like different cylinders, right? Got that? So the question is that considered one oven? Or is each cylinder an independent space? That's the question. There was a debate in the Talmud. Rabbi Eliezer says the whole thing is pure. Everything outside of that particular cylinder. The sages argued and they said, no, everything is impure. It's one thing. So Rabbi Eliezer said, I think I learned this in the Talmud last time. Rabbi Eliezer said, if the law is with me, then let the river prove it. And the carob tree prove it. And the carob tree moved like 100 feet. The carob just jumped, and they were like, "Whoa!" Right, that's cool. But the sages said, sorry, we can't prove Torah law from carob trees. So he says, well, then let the river prove it if it's like me. And the river started flowing upstream. They were like, look, that's cool, Rabbi. But nice magic trick there. But we don't make Torah laws based on rivers going upstream. Then he says that the walls of the yeshiva, of the academy, prove it, and the walls started caving in, and then somebody stopped them from caving in. Eventually, a heavenly voice called out and said, let the God prove it. If the law is with me, let God prove it. And God, the heavenly voice, comes out and declares, the law is like Rabbi Eliezer. I mean, guys, seriously, if we're having a debate over here, right? Right? And I say the Rab is wrong. And then a heavenly voice says, chill out, Rabbi, Rab is right. Imagine a heavenly voice said, Rabbi, take it easy. Rab is correct. Then what would happen? We'd be like, whoa, cool. Right? But really, what happened was that the sages said, that's very nice that you got a heavenly voice, but we don't make rulings based on heavenly voices. We rule by majority. That's how the ruling goes in the Torah. Interesting conversation. And therefore, eventually, they overruled Rabbi Eliezer with all of those spiritual supports. And ultimately, when Elijah the prophet was asked a little while later, what was God doing at the time? What was God doing at the time that he was overruled by the sages? Said Elijah, he was laughing. He was laughing. What was he laughing? Because obviously it was an unexpected result. He was laughing because he was overruled by his children. And in the words that he said, when my children, they have overruled me, my children, they have overruled me. It's double expression. Okay? So that was the story. Now that we understand the story, let's go back into the Maimer in order to see the how the Rebbe uses this story as a proof. This is similar to a story related in the Talmud during a debate amongst the sages regarding Jewish law. A heavenly voice stated that Rabbi Eliezer's opinion was correct, but Rabbi Yeshua, leading the sages, countered that the Torah is not in heaven and therefore heavenly voice has no effect on the halachic decision, on the final ruling. The law was ultimately decided according to the opinion of the majority and according to the proper way of deciding Jewish law, not according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. When they later asked Elijah the prophet what God was doing when this occurred, he replied, God was laughing. And he said, my children have defeated me. We see right here again a second Talmudic source that when God is made to laugh, when God is humored, that's when God is overruled. We see from here that when God's children defeat him, i.e. overturn his decrees in order to reveal his ultimate will, he receives a tremendous pleasure represented by laughter. So again, that's a beautiful story which serves as a spiritual, not a cute story, Michael. It is a profound, deep spiritual story here, which was recorded in perpetuity in the Talmud in order to serve as an everlasting testament to the Jewish people forevermore. That whenever we can do the same, and you can do the same, you can make God laugh. When you turn your dysfunctional life into a functional life, when you apologize to your wife, can you imagine? Can you imagine? You have every reason to be upset with your wife, and then you muster the humility and the courage to apologize to her. What have you done? And you do so sincerely. Then what have you done? You've turned darkness into light. You've made God laugh. Isn't that a most beautiful thing to do? Isn't that an amazing thing? Imagine you're a Jew after the Holocaust. And you say, God, I have every reason to hate you. But I'm going to come to shul, and I'm going to daven. And I don't get you, and I don't agree with you, and I don't condone you, but I love you. I love you anyways. Imagine. Wow. What have you done?
So Lauren's granddaughter could be the greatest example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's a place in Israel called the Israel Parent Sports Center that takes these kids. It's been there for 60 years, wounded soldiers, kids, and
it
transforms
rehabilitates them, gives them a new purpose.
Right. Exactly.
So let's go back. I want to keep this moving again. The text is so fundamental, and I want to make sure we finish this topic. Okay. So in the middle of 226, just as it is with Torah matters, right? That when God is made to laugh, he's allows himself to be overruled. As in the case above, when God laughed when his children defeated him in a matter of Jewish law, so does it apply in everyday matters like health, like wealth, like political, financial, and other forms of success. Although God created the world in a way that conceals his presence, he created the world as a marketplace, which is his place of spiritual chaos. He has tremendous pleasure when the Jewish people defeat him and reveal his presence within creation. Remember, we've learned a lot about how this world is a concealment. This world is a veil. The very first word of the Torah, Bereshis. God created a veil. Barashis. He created a veil. He created a mask, a masquerade. God is hiding. So God is hiding, and when the kid comes out and he says, "Ha ha! I know you're there," what you've done is that you made him laugh. You've exposed him, right? Well, you've turned the spiritual chaos of the marketplace into a spiritual chorus, which is a place of great spiritual pleasure. Then we too are able to experience what we're going to talk about in a moment, which is the reversal of decrees in our mundane, ordinary, everyday life. One more example we're going to give right now. This concept is reflected in the law. This is a spiritual example again. This concept is reflected in the law about the ability of the rabbinical court to determine the day when the month begins. Now, the way it works in the Jewish calendar is that until the time of the Mishnah, which was in the 2nd or 3rd century CE, the Jewish calendar was determined by the testimony of 2 witnesses who claimed to have seen the new moon. They would travel to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. They would be cross-examined and interrogated to figure out if indeed they had seen the moon or not. And if they saw the new moon, then it was declared that today is the first day of the new month, and all was good. But if they were found out to be lying or they didn't show up, then there would be 30 days in the previous month, and then at the beginning of the next month would be tomorrow. So it was always unclear when the new month was going to begin. Once the Romans began to persecute the Jews to the point that travel was dangerous and unpredictable, the sage Hillel decided to create an algorithm which would predict the Jewish calendar in a 19-year cycle. And that's what we use. It's a 19-year cycle. We know exactly which year is a leap year. We know which year is not a leap year, which month is 30 days, which one says 29 days, and we're good, right? But until then, when the month was determined by testimony, sometimes it happened that the sages needed to manipulate the ruling in order to declare the new month, even though they didn't actually see the moon. But if the sages declared a new month, it was done. The deed was done. For example, if there was a war going on and they needed an extra day of fighting a battle, different things like that. Sometimes they need an extra month. They declared a leap year. They need an extra month before Passover. They don't have time for Pesach because sometimes, let's say, the high priest didn't want to go into the mikveh in the wintertime. He was a little uncomfortable going into cold mikveh, so he wanted to delay it a little bit. So he was a man of great influence in the temple. He was able to potentially consider making a leap year and adding an extra month. So he would go to the mikveh on Yom Kippur 5 times when it was a little warmer, right? Sorry, he would make it not a leap year. The leap year would mean that it would be closer to the winter if it was an extra month, right? And so on and so forth. So what happens when the sages manipulated the calendar in a deliberate way? Then what happens? Take a look. This concept is reflected in law about the ability of the rabbinical court to determine the day when the new month begins. Although the court is supposed to determine the first day of the new month according to a specific set of rules, if they determine it incorrectly, and even if they do so on purpose, whether they make a mistake or a deliberate manipulation of the declaration of the new month, God says to the heavenly court, you and I will abide with the judgment of the earthly court, which means that God allows us to overrule him. Now, what's the humor here? Perhaps the humor here is that the sages gave God an unexpected result in the ruling of the new month. That God was like, hey, listen, it was supposed to be this way, but you did it that way. This is very sensitive and subtle stuff. This does not mean that you can break the rules of the Torah and then you're making God laugh, and therefore God is, God is somehow, yeah. You're gonna say, well, I'm gonna eat the lobster because that's not what God was expecting, and therefore I'm good. No, that's not what it means. It means that the sages who declared the new month, what they did was they did so according to the very specific parameters that only they were allowed to employ, a very specific mechanism that they were allowed to use in order to declare the new month in the beginning of the new month. So let's tie it all together. This gives us greater insight into the statement above regarding teaching Torah to the son of an unlearned person. When you inspire someone who is uninspirable, or perhaps even deplorable, you know those people? If you inspire someone, sorry, political statement. If you inspire someone who is uninspired and lost, spiritually lost, what happens is that you become empowered with the ability to change the weather, folks. It's amazing power. The reason why he takes the precious out of the disgraced, teaches Torah to the son of an unlearned person, according to him shall it be, is that God has tremendous pleasure and laughter from the refinement of the sparks which were previously concealed, taking the precious sparks out of the disgrace, concealment out of klippa, because you have transformed negative into positive, dysfunction into function, ignorance into education, inspiration into awareness. Therefore, according to him, according to the mentor, shall it be. Therefore, God applies the rule of God makes a decree, and the righteous person nullifies it. To someone who teaches and disseminates Torah, God applies the rule of God makes a decree and a righteous person nullifies it. He applies that rule to someone who teaches and disseminates Torah to those who don't have a Torah education. Since the efforts of this righteous person cause tremendous pleasure and laughter for God, God enables him to nullify his decrees. God laughs and says, my children have defeated me. So folks, you notice that there's an underlying theme here that runs throughout the Torah. You see it in the story of the Tanur Shalachnai, the cylinder oven. You see it in the story of how the new month was declared. And you see it in a verse in Jeremiah that says, those who turn precious, the disgraced into precious, according to him shall it be. And you learn it in the Talmud when it teaches about a person who inspires an uninspired child to see that that God will change his will for his sake. It's a theme which comes up in different parts of the Torah, different parts of the oral Torah and written Torah. And you see that what Chassidus is doing is tying it together in the most meaningful way. It's saying the Chassidus is telling us, listen, folks, you have the power to be able to change your destiny. You want to change the outcome in the war in Israel, you can do this. You want to make an impact on the Houthis, on the Hezbollah, on the Hamas, on the hostages, you can make a difference. How do you do that? Make God laugh. Make God laugh. I saw a video yesterday of a Nova survivor. Can you imagine a Nova survivor? Not exactly the most, let's say, observant Jews. Okay, because, it was Simchas Torah, they were at a dance party, right? Simchas Torah. But it wasn't, I'm not sure if there was a Torah at the Simchas Torah party. You know what I mean? But it was Nova, right? This guy, he became a Haredi. You know what a Haredi is?
Ultra.
Like, yeah, ultra, whatever ultra means. But he became like an ultra Orthodox, but like from like Jerusalem, like deep in back streets of Jerusalem. This guy became like very, very, very religious and observant. And you're like, look at this. You're like, whoa. That's kind of humorous. The guy went from being like a rock punk, whatever, and he became this observant Jew. It's quite amazing. You listen to him talk, and he talks with such spiritual sensitivity. You look at a Gamburger who began to keep Shabbos inside of the hostage captivity. You look at Keith Siegel, another American hostage from Gaza who learned how to bless God before he ate food, the little food that he ate in Gaza. He would make blessings. And how did he learn the blessings? They showed him the captors. They showed him a clip from Tel Aviv restaurant where some guy was making a blessing. So he was inspired. He's like, I'm going to make that blessing on every food that comes my way. So what happens is that this is a person that's managed to make God laugh, give him an unexpected result. And if you can give God an unexpected result, if you can turn your discomfort. This is not easy, folks. This is not easy. And I apologize. I'm sorry if I just apologize if I'm sounding insensitive, if I am sounding insensitive. But I just want to validate your pain. If you're going through a hard time, and it's not easy when your kids are running amok. It's not easy if you're fearful of the future of your children. And it's not easy if you're worried to death about Israel. Or if you're fighting with demons that you can't even keep up with. Really, if you're fighting with an addiction, for example. I don't want to sound insensitive, and I already hope that I'm not sounding insensitive. But at least we can draw some strength from this Chassidus today, Chabad Chassidus teaching, that tells us that this is not a dead end, that your problem is not the end of your story, that a bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the turn. Because sometimes, I just want to finish at this point, because sometimes, in life, this is painful, but sometimes when you feel like everything is around you is dark, sometimes when you feel like your life is just imploding, you can't keep up with the pressure. You can't breathe. You're suffocated. You feel like you're being buried. It's your faith that shows you that you're not being buried. You're being planted. You're not being buried You're being planted. It's within this darkness and suffocation that lie the seeds of a growth spurt, the likes of which you couldn't even dream of. Yes, Toby.
And you're talking about, how did Moshe Rabbeinu make Hashem laugh when he made him change his mind about killing all the Jewish people?
How did Moses make God laugh when he made him change his mind, when he advocated for the Jewish people after the sin of the golden calf? Did he make him laugh? Well, I guess he made him change his mind, right? So what's the question? Did he make him laugh? I don't know if he made him laugh, but he gave him it. But yeah, he threatened God, and he said, if you don't forgive them, then I'm out of here. Don't include me in your book. I guess, yeah, maybe he did give God an unexpected result. It's like, nobody talks to me like that.
Right. That's unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty. He's like, really? Look who's talking. I think that could have been pretty impressive, and maybe that's why Moses was the miracle worker. Yeah. Well, remember the definition of laughter. Laughter means unexpected result. It's a punchline. That's all it is. Yes, Steve.
So I have a deep question.
Yeah, deep question.
Sounds like reading this.
Yeah.
That people didn't think you could change God's mind prior to reading this.
It seems like what?
People didn't understand you could change God's mind.
Prior to reading this, people thought you could not understand. You could not change God's mind. Okay.
Okay. So if you read the book of the Gate of Trust, and God is good and God is positive, then you can come to understanding that when God gives you something negative, He wants you to change His mind.
That's exactly right. When you read the Gates of Trust, you realize that God actually wants you to change His mind. And by the way, if you're Daita Moskva, the book that I wrote, is exactly the same thing.
Right.
Is that the dark moments in your life are there actually to give you the tools in order to change your outcome. And if you didn't have dark moments, you wouldn't have the tools. Go ahead.
So my question is, knowing that God is good and God is kind and everything else, why didn't more people understand that you could change God's mind by doing the right thing?
Okay, so you're saying this knowledge is so powerful, it's so precious. Why does the whole world not know this?
Yeah.
I think if the whole world knew this, it wouldn't be funny. That's what I think.
It
It wouldn't be unexpected. If this was something as simple as potato chips and Coca-Cola, right? If it came that naturally to you, then it wouldn't be unexpected. The whole thing is that you live in a world which is a world gone mad. It's a world gone mad. It's a world that actually condemns Israel, and a world that does not condemn Julani Syrian tyrants for their genocide. Can you imagine? Israel shot one stray bullet. Genocide! These guys are massacring more people than people can count. And you don't hear a peep. Nothing. Right? This is a world gone mad. And in this world, which is insane, if you could be a moment of sanity, then you are actually making God laugh. But if the punchline has come to be expected, if the punchline is establishment, then sorry, Steve, but it's no longer a punchline anymore.
If people read the book Gates of Trust before they read this.
Yes, they read the Gates of Trust. Unfortunately.
What's the point?
Of
I'm going to send a tornado to destroy your house so that you can do something and then make me laugh and things will be better. Why are you destroying my house?
Sounds like a sadistic God, hey?
What's the point?
He's like, I'm going to put you through hell. I'm going to rake you over the coals. But I'm going to give you a little hidden key.
Yeah.
And maybe we can make a comedy skit out of this, right?
You know what's the old adage? You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Yeah.
How about you know what?
A little honey here.
Rob, if you ever get a seat on the God's cabinet, I want you to bring that up.
I'm gonna.
All right? Seriously, if you ever get a seat, I want you to remember this. Remember this conversation. And say, hello, I have an observation, criticism.
I think God likes comedians. That's why my favorite joke in the whole world is when the Holocaust survivor comes up to God. God says, "Tell me something funny." First thing he says is, "Tell me a joke."
See?
So
that's the depth of your joke.
Yeah, God.
Rob, I think that to be a Jew, Rob, I can't speak for Gentiles. I can't speak for Gentiles. I'm speaking for Jews right now because at least this is my specialty. And I just want to say that I think that Hanan Ben Ari, the singer, was onto something when he said, "God, why did you put a soul in me?" I don't think it was for lack of knowledge of these concepts that he wrote that. I think it was with the knowledge of these concepts that he wrote that. He said, "Look, I understand. I got it. Okay, you wanted to make you laugh. I got it. But you know what? It's too painful. In fact, I'm not in the mood of laughing anymore. Because after my divorce and my difficult marriage and my bankruptcy and my my child gone astray and my business gone awry and God else, whatever. You know what, God, I'm not in the mood. And I think that's what he's saying in his song. And that's why the Jewish people have a cry that the Rebbe urged us to demand. He said, God, enough. Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. That's what we're saying. We're saying, God, I'm not sure if you're still in the theater or not, but we've checked out. We're ready to, we're ready to go home. I'm tired. And God's still waiting for the act to get on the stage. And we're like, no, God, we want Mashiach now. We want redemption. We need you. We want to be connected. We've struggled enough already. And, God has infinite patience, much more than we do. So I certainly want to validate your pain, Rob, because I think all of us are experiencing the same. Every single person that you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. I think people are exhausted. I just think they're exhausted. They want to have wholesome relationships, but they can't. They want to be good parents and spouses and children and employers and employees. But they just have too many demons. It's too hard. So that's why we say, God, you know what? We want Mashiach now. Have a nice day.